The John Lebang Show has been known to make people laugh, sing, think, scream, throw things in rage, and generally lose their minds. Listener discretion is advised.
Worldwide and out to the greater universe, you're listening to the John Lebang Show.
Well, friends, welcome back to another broadcast. Thank you for joining me. Try to be a little bit more peppy than I was last week. I guess with the temperatures that are gripping this part of the nation, it's a little hard to be sluggish. You're cold, you're freezing, you're going to be a little bit more active just to stay warm. You know, when I was considering what we're going to talk about, because I actually wanted to have something relevant, I guess, to talk about, something different than what has kind of gripped the show the last two outings, I decided, you know, with all the things that I talk about on this broadcast throughout the years, one of the main things I would do is have some kind of little Johnisms, little sayings that were my way of coding what we were talking about. Because of the algorithms, if you say the wrong thing, then you get little markers on your videos or different little tags in your posts. And, well, that's just how the censorship has been working. So what I thought about doing, and I've been accumulating these terms for years now, and because we're in a new year, I thought we'd add some more terms to our vernacular here. So those of you who are not familiar with the show and who tune in and go, what is this guy talking about when I say something like the malpractice media? What exactly is that guy talking about? Even though that term in itself has now been picked up all over the mainstream. And longtime listeners will know that was my starting saying. I used to use that all the time, and I still do. So with the show today, and I really thought, okay, do we tackle the vast array of subjects that are out there? And I thought, well, we could do that in a banger kind of way by just going through not only some of the new Johnisms that are being developed for this year, but some of the old ones, so that new listeners who hear these terms will be enlightened a little bit and can quickly catch on to what I'm saying. So with that long-winded intro, let's begin. Now, of course, we've done a lot of stuff over the past year, especially on coding. And in fact, what we're doing here is a form of coding so we can get past the algorithms. But the coding that we were talking about in the last year in particular wrapped around, well, different numbers and what was related to those numbers. We did a recent video right before the end of the year, right around Christmas. I don't know if it was, I forgot the date of it. And we talked about the number 8 and what that meant, the number 13 and how that relates to the U.S. presidency, 1-9 and what that relates to. And it's easy if you think about it, because with coding, especially on this level, when we say 1-9, if you convert that to, let's say, letters, you get the letters A, being A the first letter in the alphabet, and I. Now, in general terms, AI, that usually stands for artificial intelligence. So when we're talking 1-9 or say 19, you can pretty much grasp what we're talking about, so you don't get confused. Because I've had people mention, because they don't understand, and sometimes they think we're speaking in some form of gibberish when we're really trying to just code what we're saying to get the point across without getting the algorithms to mess with us. Of course, many of you who followed the broadcast know about 2-1 and what that related to, the ritual that has taken place, may be currently in place, and we'll be talking about some of that maybe in a subsequent video or something. Of course, 3-1, when we discuss 3-1, if we're saying, a bunch of ships from 3-1 are out there bothering Taiwan, or 3-1 had an incursion into Taiwan, the number 3-1 or 31 relates to China. And we've done the coding to show you that, so that way you don't get confused. If you don't know what we're talking about, you can go in our past videos and find that stuff out. 17 and on, that's a new term we're going to dub this year. 17 and on. 17, if you convert that to a letter, you'll figure all that out. So when you hear us talk about the people over there at 17 and on, you'll know what it's about. Pretty simple, huh? Of course, our next term that we're dubbing this year is Agenda 44. That is in relation to the combination of 13 and 31 and the result of that, which is going to eventually, because Agenda 41 is kind of a cocoon period, a transition period, a metamorphosis period. And eventually, that 4-4, the 44, Agenda 44, will turn into an 8. And that 8 will be birthed at some point. And you'll get clued in on some of that over the coming weeks as we discuss some of the stuff, as we finally get back into some kind of semblance of regular broadcasting here. Then, of course, we have AJ. This is an old term. Everybody uses it. This is not something we came up with, but we still use it because it's appropriate. AJ stands for Alex Jones. It can also relate to InfoWars itself, but in general, it relates to Alex Jones. Now we have the anti-fun group. Now, a lot of people might already catch on what I'm saying there, the anti-fun group. But if you don't know, that's that Antifa group. See, if we say anti-fun group, we kind of get past the algorithms. But now that we said the other thing, well, something might happen. We don't know. We'll have to talk about some of that too, because some of the things we're going to discuss here as we're going over the terms are things that are related to those terms in particular, like the Battle Legion Masses. Just use the acronym and you will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that. And then Mr. Algorithm doesn't get all mad at us, Because we don't want Al Gore mad at us, ladies and gentlemen. Not at all. Now, another brand new term for this year, Blue Fairy Syndicate. And you're going to see a lot of Pinocchio references this year because, well, we think it's appropriate with what has transpired in the nation. And we'll get to that over many, many, many weeks and broadcasts of this show. But the Blue Fairy Syndicate relates to everybody that is related to the Geppetto crime family. And we'll get into Geppetto as we talk about the terms. As you see, we're going alphabetically. Figured that was the best way because it was going to be confused and random and all over the place if we didn't do it that way. So, Blue Fairy Syndicate, that is the Geppetto crime family. Stick around for Geppetto, you'll find out who that is. Now, China Boy, that is another term for Mr. Geppetto. Now, Geppetto, when we're discussing the China Boy syndrome, that is in direct relation to 31. Joe Petto and 31. So take that as you may. Now our next one, Colonel P. He's actually back on YouTube. He was either suspended or something or other. I'm not exactly sure what happened with Colonel P there, but he's back on the tubers there, and he just says he wouldn't use it that much to discuss anything, and he'd send you over to, I forgot the other platform that he was sending everybody over to, and then he just makes a series of videos, even though he said he wasn't going to do that. Guess he was missing doing that. I don't fault. I like some of the things the guy talks about, but, and we'll get into another tuber there eventually, with the same kind of syndrome going on over there. You know, these people act like they're going to go away, but they don't go away, and they make a big hoo-ha. And Colonel P himself brought up, because he had connection problems or something, that it was the big brother there that was causing some of the issues, and maybe it was just bad connection, bro. Maybe it's just bad connection. We don't know. Okay, moving on. Our next term, which is not a new term, this was probably dubbed 2 years ago, but Conqueso Cortez. That is, she's spicy, she's hot, and she's really cheesy, and I'm talking about AOC. So every time I talk about Conqueso Cortez, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it is not because I've been accused of this, of being a meanie, because I use that term, but as I said, she's hot, she's spicy, and, well, if you listen to her, you can tell she's pretty cheesy. So I think it's an appropriate nickname for her. Now we have, getting into other things that don't relate specifically to politics or anything like that, we have a new term this year, the Deadbeat Dad Society. That's all those guys that don't stand up and take care of their children. They, for whatever reason, maybe they're just lifelong criminals, or just, lowlifes, or whatever the case may be. Even if you don't like the mom, you still made that kid. They don't seem to want to take care of their children. So they're part of that Deadbeat Dad Society. Now we have the next thing in alphabetical order, the debt note. Basically, that is the Federal Reserve note that you carry around in your pocket, that the Great Reset, and you've heard that term, the Great Reset is attempting to remove, because they can no longer use printed money to hide all the fakery that's going on. So they'd rather digitize it, just like they want to digitize history and digitize everything else, so that way if they need to change or erase or whatever, it's not as apparent. Like ripping down statues that people can see, right? Banning people and all this, erasing people in real life, people can see that. But if it's all digitized, you can just erase it all, and the attention span of most people is, very short. So there you go. You can get rid of history. Man, Hitler would have loved it. I think we'll go over maybe one or two more before we head to break. This one relates, and I'm not going to point this out to who it relates to, but I'm sure you're going to get it. Deep Throat Kamala, or the Deep Throat Camel. I think that's pretty apparent who we're talking about. So every time I bring up the Deep Throat Camel, well, you'll know exactly who that is. We've got the E7, and if you just convert those, one to letters and one to the numbers, just convert them, you'll figure out what that is and what we're referring to. Of course, Farm 13 will be the last one we'll get to here before we go to break. Farm 13 is the pharmaceutical industry, and you can figure out how that is termed out pretty easily if you've been following the show. we're going to take a quick time out. We're just getting into the new terms for 2021 here on the John Lebang Show. Letter H and beyond up next.
Hey, Uncle Shady, where are they going? Hey, you, get back here. The John Lebang Show will be right back.
Are you in need of commercial or residential window cleaning? Do you need your office cleaned? Maybe custodial work? How about some gutter cleaning? If you do, then call Pane in the Glass. For a beautiful shine that's crystal clear, call Pane and the Glass. You can find them on Facebook at Pane and the Glass.
You're listening to the John Lebang Show.
It's better than an Eye-Raider convention.
Hope you're enjoying this broadcast. It's a little more upbeat this week. Trying to keep things a little more lighthearted. And since we don't want to specifically talk about instances of things that are going on, only because there's so many other people talking about it, and the news and the information is so jumbled, and we don't really know what's going on. We haven't for a long time, and whatever it is, most of it is out of our hands at this point. So let's move on to the letter H and the hollow suits. Now that some people would call empty suits, and yeah, that fits as well. Those are those politicians that tell you all these great things and then end up, well, giving you absolutely none of those promises, or very few of the promises, or, just enough to go, see, you got to reelect me one more time so that way I can get the job done. Very much like the Donald was trying to do. He didn't get a whole lot done during his first, but he's if you do it again, if you just reelect me again, then maybe I can get some more stuff done. Of course, we'll talk about that past thing that happened there on back in November. Next on the agenda is the Hippocrat. Now, that is an interesting beast in the great zoo of this universe that we live in, political universe. The Hippocrat is a Democrat that will attack and destroy and point fingers at their political opponent, yet when a political ally, or maybe even themselves, do the very same thing, they cheer it on, they say it's okay, or they just look the other way. They have nothing to say about it. Speaking of a Hippocrat, one of the biggest ones is Joe Petto himself. The number 46 on the POTUS chart, although he is the 45th actual POTUS. But Joe Petto, he's the one in charge of the Blue Fairy Crime Syndicate. And so, Joe Petto, you can go back to that Pinocchio reference I had spoke earlier. There's going to be a lot of those, and we're going to continue to add to this book of reference so that all of us can be on the same page and talk about this stuff and work around all the censorship that these big Skynet companies, that's another term we'll get to eventually, engage in. So Joe Petto is the 46, that could equal 10, but 46, the number one man right now in that POTUS chair. Moving on. A term I think we dubbed a year or two ago, I'm not real sure, but joint relations. Anything to do with marijuana? And we haven't talked about a whole lot of marijuana news here over the past 2-3 years. It's been pretty quiet because there's other things going on. But we used to discuss it a heck of a lot more, and we're going to use the term joint relations in that regard. Of course, Junior Mac, that's the Donald's son. So whenever we discuss Junior Mac or the Donald's son, we'll talk, and we'll say, yeah, that was Junior Mac doing his thing. And again, we don't, you have to talk this way if you're going to engage in these mainstream social media platforms and actually be able to discuss topics without having Mr. Al Gore pull his rhythm on you. And he's got great rhythm. Of course, long-time Johnism, Kim Ding Dong, that refers to Kim Jong-un out there in North Korea. Knight of David, which we'll be talking about that gentleman. Of course, that's the former employee of InfoWars over there, David Knight. Apparently, if you mention his name, that's what you hear. You know, you mention his name and you have issues. So I guess if I say David Knight too often, David Knight that term might get me banned. I don't know. So we're going to call him Knight of David. See how that works. Of course, another long-term Johnism is the LGBTQ, Y, and Z community. Self-explanatory. Really no need to go into that, especially if you're a long-term listener of the show. New term for 2021, but we've kind of always said this, just not in this way. We're kind of shortening it up. We're going to call it the linguini font instead of an elephant, because, you know, the Republicans are supposed to be these elephants, right? No, they're linguini fonts. That's what they are. And you can figure out all that term. Of course, we have the malpractice media. We brought that up earlier, and that is still one of our main terms when we discuss the media and how they leave out pertinent information, maybe shed too much light on one thing and then bury some other information that would kind of give you a better outlook on the whole story. You know, they push a narrative. Well, that's the malpractice media. We have the masters of reality. That, of course, is pretty explanatory. I believe Monograph himself calls them the light lords, and a lot of people are picking up on this coding. They have to talk in code a little bit. We'll talk about Mr. Monty a little bit later, actually. I don't like the light lords, but I know what they're getting at. They're really the masters of reality. They kind of control everything, in my opinion, even the light at this point. We've got the medical monarchy. That, of course, refers to worshiping everything in the medical field, everything at all, the workers, you know, how great everything's doing over the different little, you know, whatever things that are going on there. Pretty self-explanatory. Monty Pants, well, we just talked about him, Mr. Monty Pants out there. He's another one that, you know, claiming that if certain things didn't happen, he'd kind of like end what he was doing, and, you know, I like Monty. He can be funny at times. He shares some good information, even though a lot of it's circumstantial, and it does get you to think, but, you know, Monty Pants he's back doing what he does, you know, and that's cool, but I just don't know why these guys always tell you that they're going to go away or they're going to do this certain thing, and then they never do. That's all. So, moving on from there, we've got naturally confused. Those are the people that can't figure out their gender, can't figure out a whole lot of things that relate to that. They're just naturally confused. And there's not much I think we can do about it, because the thing we're going to get to here in a few minutes, the propaganda pulpit, continually confuses these people even more. 1/6 or January 6th, that is, of course, in reference to anything that happened at the Capitol on the 6th of January. Operation Ballot Box. That, of course, is in relation to what happened during the 2020 presidential election and all the shenanigans that most of us could see, but nobody seems to care when it comes to fixing the problem so that never happens again. Operation Lockdown, well, we're currently in it, and that is the surrounding of the Capitol with National Guard troops for whatever reason they need to protect themselves from. Obviously, in past incarnations of governments that would do that. That's because they were an illegitimate government. Of course, you can't say they're an illegitimate government because, half the country, or, whatever. It's not half the country, but there's a portion of the country that wants to run everything. And if you say that anything was rigged or was tainted or was stolen or, any of those little things, Mr. Al Gore has a problem with that. That's a Montyism, by the way. Monty Pants thought of that, or I think Monty Pants thought of that. The Al Gore rhythm there. That's pretty cool. And I'm going to continue to use it because I don't think he copywrote it. So, again, going back to Monty Pants just for a moment. I like a lot of stuff he does. Just, if you're going to say you're going to go away, just, don't change, don't back out on that. Just don't say it is all. That's all. Moving on. Pinocchio. Well, we're going to talk a lot about Pinocchio this year. And as we discuss it, we'll say like Pinocchio Sanders or Pinocchio whatever. And that's really anybody who is a puppet of the masters of reality. And so that's going to be our little way, and we'll just add Pinocchio and give him a last name or whatever fits, because sometimes maybe it's the first name that'll be cool with the Pinocchio after it. I don't know. We'll find out as we go. Another term, this is one that's been with us maybe since one of the very first terms, actually, and that's President Zero. That relates to Barry Soetoro himself, or as he's more popularly known as, Barack Hussein Obama. President Zero. We talked a few moments ago about the propaganda pulpit, and that would be anything that is being pushed by either the mainstream media, mainstream politicians, anything that basically has the agenda of some people would call it deep state, other people would call them the light lords. We, of course, prefer the masters of reality, but anybody pushing that kind of propaganda that comes from the propaganda pulpit. Our next one, Proud Informant Boy. Well, that's the leader of the Proud Boys. Pretty simple. We did a video recently on that one. Of course, one of our longest standing terms is schmeckle. I don't think I have to tell anybody what that is, but if you really need to know, go look that up. We use a lot of Yiddish terms here on occasion, like schmegigi and schmuck. I just like to go shmuh, because shmuh is good. I just like that. Maybe I was Jewish in a former life. I don't know. But I like to shmuh, schmeckle, schmegigi. I just like that. Then, of course, next on the new terms for 2021 is the sharing sheeple. And those are the people, and I just recently came across that, and that's what got me thinking about making a term for them, is the people that'll share a meme that has very little or absolutely no basis in reality. Maybe they'll share a post without researching it to make sure that whatever's being pushed in a post or a media story is actually factual 100% and doesn't have some kind of sway or unbalance to it. A lot of people do it. You see it being memes are notorious for it. They have a meme that has no basis in reality, and then all the other dummies go ahead and share it because it's something they want to believe. So I'm calling those people the sharing sheeple. I think it's a nice term. One more before we take a quick break, and that's the single mom movement. Kind of a new term for this year, and that's going to be the single moms out there that, well, they, for whatever reason, became single moms and don't have a father in in the life of their kids, basically, or it comes from a broken family. I think we're going to take a quick time out as we run through more terms here. Plenty more to go. Can you believe it? We're ripping through a whole show and we're just doing terms. And that's okay. As we talk about these things going along, you'll see that these will all come together. Be right back, folks.
Don't move a muscle.
The John Lebang Show will be right back.
With lots of fun and excitement. Yes!
Jim's Tuxedo and Menswear is your one-stop shop for tuxedos and men's quality suits. We go the extra mile to make sure your tux or suit is the perfect fit. Our huge selection is second to none in the state.
Looking good.
Outstanding customer service.
And we're located on Dix Toledo in Southgate. Call today, 734-285-3253.
Jim's Tuxedo and Menswear is the place to be.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to Jim's Tuxedos and Menswear.
You know I had to come to the best.
That's right.
Hey, man, it's at the bottom of the hour, man. Do you know where your kids are, man?
If you want to contact the John Lebang Show, feel free to send an email to jlebang@live.com. And if you're on Twitter, look him up at John Lebang. And don't forget to go to his Facebook page at The John Lebang Show. Banger. Now here's John.
So we left off on the single mom movement. Next is stooge tube. And that's anybody that is on the tube from the alternative media side of things who just sensationalizes, spews propaganda, spews unverified everything. Those guys are a stooge tube. Of course, we've talked about the boogie woogie and what that is. If you're unfamiliar with that, just think of the thing that has kept us locked down for the past year or so. The bug that has been the main focus of getting, well, the poker in you, as well as making sure you're all tested up so you're nice and healthy. Then, of course, we've got the Donald. We've been talking about him for, 5-6 years now on this broadcast, and the Donald's pretty simple. He isn't going away. Looks like he's, and it was pretty funny when he put out the the little memo there from the office of the former president of the United States. I get a giggle out of that, right? There are times when I actually like the Donald for his little antics. Not all the time. And he really needed to get more done than he did. And, well, in fact, I don't think it's going to matter much anyways if he was there or if we had Biden in running things. Especially now that 44 is taking place. And on 4-4, I think the rebirth, I think that we're going to be reborn into the 8, if you're understanding that. The poker, of course, is the jab, the roll up your sleever, and all the other terms that are being bantied about on the interwebs, and, well, you know, the VAC. You know, how obscene that is. That's what the poker is. Thinking mind, we've talked about that pretty much for a long time as well. These are the people that use critical thought when something is brought up, is pushed, and don't just absorb it like an open mind, you know, because an open mind can be filled with trash if you're not critically thinking. And unfortunately, when they tell you to have an open mind, they're really telling you to absorb as much garbage and propaganda as possible. And one of our things here is you've got to be a thinking mind, a critical thinker. You've got the trumpeters. We've had those for many years. Those are the people that worship Trump all the time. Trump, can't live without Trump. We're utterly heartbroken when he wasn't president anymore. And those people are some of the people that were dumb enough to follow the rabble rousers, the people from those anti-fun groups and alike, as well as the establishment officers that just turned their head and allowed people into the building. You know, funny because Queso Cortez, she just came up actually. She made up a whole story about the night on 1/6, right? A whole story, and apparently that was just for the propaganda pulpit. It absolutely had no basis in fact, from what I'm understanding at this point. Of course, then we have the twits. Those are the people that just tweet and tweet and tweet, no matter what. That's their whole life. They live through the twits, so they can tweet all they want. We've talked about Mr. Al Gore and his rhythm. He's all over the place, and you've got to be careful because he created the internet. Again, that was Monty who I think first brought it up. I'm not real sure. Monty Pants over there. Vlad, well, that's Vlad is stands for Vladimir Putin, just shortening it up for him. The Wicked Witch of the West, which we used to have multiple ones, but really there's only one left standing, and that's Nancy Pelosi. And can you imagine if Joe Petto somehow gets removed and the deep throat camel takes the POTUS spot? Then technically the next in line, and I'm not sure that's what happens, but I think it does. Maybe a constitutional scholar can talk to me about that and let me know for sure. But that automatically makes the Wicked Witch of the West the VP, right? And if she's the VP, she's only one step away. And in these illegitimate government structures that have plagued society and mankind for hundreds, if not thousands of years, we know that when they start rigging things and they start tampering with things, especially in things like Operation Ballot Box, you know you've become a banana split of a republic. And it's just a matter of time before these forces eat each other. And they'll find reasons, because it's clear as day that Joe Petto runs the Blue Fairy Crime Syndicate. And it's a quite big syndicate. And it seems that some of the information is trickling out, like they can't stop it. They held it off enough to get Operation Ballot Box to be successful. They had all the backup in the Just Us system, another term we probably should have brought up. Just Us. But soon, all that information will come out about Joe Petto. You can see it, as I said, trickling out. And eventually, that talk of that 25th amending thing to amend the situation might come into play. Or maybe the dementia starts wearing in and the medication doesn't hold it all together. And you're seeing the breakneck speed of the executive actions that are just being ripped through at a level that's incredible. And that means they're hurrying up for something. They're rushing for something. Probably, I don't know, maybe around April 4th. Where 44 will turn into 8. It's possible. And whatever metamorphosis that's happening between 2-1 and 8, this 44, well, something will be born that day, reborn. And they're having to rush and hurry to get everything in preparation for that. And they figure maybe they can bribe you one more time. They didn't want to give you money when you really needed it. But now that Operation Lockdown is underway, and they are protected. Because remember, they made sure that none of the people protecting them would turn on them. They wanted to make sure that they had order followers. And we hear different numbers of the amount of NG that are there. And it doesn't really matter. Because no legitimately elected government would have ever surrounded themselves like that inside a fence that they won't even continue to build a wall to protect the nation. But they have a fence protecting them. And I think it won't be long before something becomes really apparent to the American people, if they haven't caught on yet. You see, a lot of people have caught on. I hear it all the time. I may not do the amount of videos I did in the past or comment as much as I used to. I had to sit out a little bit there, kind of recharge the batteries. But I watched, and I seen who you guys were following, and I couldn't believe a lot of it. I was like, really? A lot of them gave that hopium, or a lot of them sensationalized. And when you bring up something like, hey, there's a informant in the so-called patriot movement, you get ridiculed and attacked and trolled because, well, you're right. And they don't want that information to get out. And when I hear all these channels that never get banned and they got monetization and they're pretending to tell the truth or they're giving their version of the malpractice media just on an alternative level, they're not getting banned. And some of the people who say they're being banned or blocked, because I know how it feels to be blocked. When I make an assessment, it sounds more like you took some time off and you acted like you were blocked. Like you acted. It gave you an excuse to walk away for whatever reason because some of your expository beliefs didn't come to fruition. And it's okay. Really, that's why I don't predict anything very much. But I can tell you by numbers that what might be significant stuff. And it doesn't always have to be some big giant event. Everybody's always looking for the big giant event. Oh, look at the world's gonna end. Meteor's coming. We've seen the meteor. We just talked about one with a friend. It's gonna be here on the 21st of March. 21st of March in 2021. And I was like, oh, isn't that odd? That's the second time I've seen a double 21 now. Double 21. It doesn't mean that an asteroid is going to hit the planet. Some big event's going to happen. Because these people who go by these kind of things just use these for timing events. It's significant to them. It doesn't mean that they're going to sacrifice a whole bunch of people or whatever in plain view. But you get these sensationalists, these people who want views because they get a couple bucks off the YouTube. They'll come up with their stuff, and then when it doesn't come through, instead of saying, oh, well, they just either, because they probably just make their videos private, or they just erase them. Oh, that never happened. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break, folks. We'll be right back.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
Because the John LeBang Show will be right back.
After this.
That's guaranteed. Yes.
Absolute Skin and Body Care, located in Livonia, Michigan. If you're in need of laser hair removal, skin care, laser tattoo removal, or laser hair regrowth, call Absolute Skin and Body Care. They're located at 37625 Ann Arbor Road, Suite 105 in Livonia, Michigan. Their phone number is 248-533-0448. Absolute Skin and Body Care. Give them a call.
You're listening to the John LeBang Show.
It's huge. Now I got to tweet about it. It's just so cold. I don't even want to take a shower. There's work to do in the studio today. I was actually thinking of doing some changes around here to give it a fresh look, because I think we've had this look for almost 2 years now, and I'm just getting a little tired of it. We're also going to be getting down to where we're going to shorten the show and have more shows each week, like we were talking about a few weeks back. None of the station owners have even mentioned. Obviously, they either didn't listen or didn't care. So we're just going to go ahead and do what we were planning. And since there's been no feedback from the station owners, we're just going to go ahead and do it. So you'll be able to get more regular broadcasts from us soon, but they're going to be more condensed. We were thinking half-hour shows for the radio every couple days, twice, 3 times a week. But until we get the studio up and running, we're going to just run this by ear. But we do want to make some changes, but we also want to keep you all informed of what's going on, because there's a lot going on in the world, and you're not going to get that information from a whole lot of sources that are just going to say, let's take a step back from this and go, okay, this is what you're being told. Now let's go look into these executive orders or the law that is taking place and actually read what it says, because as we are finding out, at least people like myself, the clause in the CARES Act that said that the $1,200 that we received was an advancement on your 2020 taxes, I'm finding out that was true. And, well, because I read it and I told you about it, now you people who have paid into your more than $1,200 or more than you receive from the government, because I think, depending on kids or whatever, you got different pricing. I don't remember how that all went. You probably are all covered if you made more than it. You just might see a smaller tax return. I don't know how it's going to work for everybody. I know for myself, I was worried because I don't pay that much. I wasn't going to pay that much in taxes this year because the business I own was pretty much totally shut down. I don't even know what I'm going to do about that this year. And the part-time job I had only paid me so much, so I only paid so much in taxes. It was a rough year over here, as it was throughout the country. We're not complaining. as much as we're saying we feel your pain, and I don't know how the people who didn't make very much money last year are going to deal with if it works the same for everybody. See, if you have kids, it might be different. I don't know. But as a single dude who no dependents, nothing, it's going to affect my tax return, and I'm probably the only money I'm really going to see is from the state side of things. Hopefully, I don't even know how they're going to manage that, because of the fact that, from my understanding, most of these governments brought in less tax money last year. Obviously, they didn't care about it so much. And why would they care? Because they were basically, on many levels, depending on how the CARES Act worked and all these other little legislative moves. And it's funny. Do you know they're really pushing that the CARES Act was only $1.8 trillion, when, if you read the bill itself, it was up to $6.3 trillion this year. Last year. I'm sorry. And they passed other little legislative things along the way. Of course, they didn't have the money for you. Congress didn't have the money for you until after the election, well after the election. And all of a sudden now, the boogie woogie, it's getting better. We're here in Michigan, we're able to open up now. You can go to a restaurant or a bar. Hey, everything's going well now. In the middle of winter, when these things like viruses and bugs and all those little things that make you sick are generally at their peak exposure. Not this year. It's an anomaly. The worst boogie woogie thing ever in the history of mankind that shut down a whole world in 2020, affected how an election went, changed, put people out of business, changed lives entirely. Now it's not so bad. Now it's because Joe Petto's there, right? Joe Petto, the miracle man. Everything's better under Joe Petto. See, folks, it was always a move to make an agenda happen. And depending on what country you were in and what kind of state your country was in, it was used. Problem, reaction, solution. Rahm Emanuel said it best. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And if you can create a crisis through an ally, number 31, maybe you can get 13 for yourself. And 44 will happen. That's where we stand right now. Because of Operation Ballot Box, the Boogie Woogie, and all the things that came with that, the whole world was shifted right under your feet, ladies and gentlemen. The world you knew 16 months ago is gone. Now they want you to get the they want you to get the little poker there. Boop! Just pop it in there. So that way the boogie woogie won't bug you. Because you don't want the bug to bug you. And because they filled your open mind with the propaganda pulpit brought to you by the malpractice media and stooge tubers alike. The world is different And it's never going to go back. And remember when you were, I remember, everybody, let's go back to normal. I told you, you never were gonna go back to normal, ever. They had used the Hegelian dialectic on you. They continue to use it. Problem, the boogie woogie. Reaction. Well, fear, death caused by executive action from the gubernatorial standpoint. They won't face charges because remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's just us. That's why Operation Ballot Box was so successful. That's why Joe Petto is in charge of POTUS. That's why eventually Deep Throat Camel will run the POTUS operation for themselves, for herself. And the hypocrites won't say anything because it'll be worse than the Donald ever did. But the hypocrites won't say anything, and the Laguinifants, well, they'll go along to get along and act like there's some sort of opposition when they're really just there to be a hollow suit. What crazy times we live in, folks. Hope you enjoyed this broadcast. Got about 2.5 minutes left. Keep your preps going, that's for sure. Don't believe any of these sharing sheeple. If you cannot find proof of what this stuff is saying, if you're seeing a post that you believe in and you share it and it's not 100% accurate, then you can't really complain that the Facebookers, the faker bookers, the Twitters out there, the tweeties, those people are blocking you because you're not doing the work, the due diligent work to make sure whatever information you're sharing is 100% accurate. And I, for one, am going to start calling everybody out for this. I've called the malpractice media out for this type of behavior for years now. I've spent my last couple years trying to help the malpractice media stop, or let me rephrase that, trying to help the alternative media stop acting like the malpractice media and only giving a one-sided view, a distorted view. You see, there's a cancel culture taking place, ladies and gentlemen, and you've got to be ready for this stuff, and you better be 100% with what you're posting and sharing in the, as Monty likes to say, the panopticon. I think that's how he says it. We've got to be on the ball on this stuff, because if you're not saying everything just right, if you're not sharing information that's not 100% accurate, all the information is going to be suppressed, and we can't have that. Anyways, folks, thanks for tuning in to this broadcast. Go to our website, www.jlebang.com, if you want to catch up on anything else that we do right here. And until the vibrations of my vocal cords reach your ears again, I'm John Lebang. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Signing out for now.